right? But I guess that's really kind of why I'm here, right? Like, how did I get here, and how did I learn to do what I do? And I've always had it in me since I was a kid. A lot of people just considered me an old soul. I had people that would come to me that were much older than me and just dump their shit right on me, right? It was interesting because people that were married, I was a teenager, and people that were married would come and talk to me about what they were going through in their marriage, and things would come out of my mouth, right? Like shit would just come out of my mouth, and they would be like, wow, Omar, you're really an old soul. Like, thank you. I really appreciate that. And I was like, absolutely, my pleasure, right? A lot of me I took for granted the gifts that I had because they're just there. Okay, how could I charge for this? Talking to people, you crazy? Like, what do you mean? How do you charge people to talk to them? Right. And what I didn't realize was that I just had this intuitive way of understanding people, of relating to people, of building rapport, of making them feel comfortable, of knowing what to say and how to say it. Okay. My voice is such a big part of that gift. Right. I know how to use my voice. Right. I launched a podcast 6 years ago. It was called the Share Podcast. Share stands for sharing, SHAIR, sharing helps addicts in recovery. So through my journey of addiction, I got to a very solid place in my life where I really wanted to give back to others. And I launched that podcast in the recovery space. And it just started doing well. I got to a point where it was doing 5,000 to 6,000 downloads an episode. I was doing 35,000 downloads a month. I had a big following on Facebook. And I was still working in the gambling business. Okay. So at the same time that I was working in the online gambling business, I was operating this podcast. And after a while, after spending about, I would say, a good 15, 16, a good 2 years. And the notoriety started to grow, and people started to recognize me as an authority in the recovery space. And I had people wanting to be on the podcast and people wanting me to be on their podcast. And then people would ask me what I do for a living. And I said, I work for an e-commerce company. I'm in Costa Rica working for an e-commerce company. By the way, I live in Costa Rica. I've been here for 23 years. I couldn't tell the truth. I didn't feel comfortable in the recovery space talking about working for an addiction. Gambling is one of the worst addictions on the planet, and I've watched it crush more people. It's deplorable. And I couldn't be a part of that anymore. But I'd been in it for so long. Imagine being in the gambling space in Costa Rica, a US citizen, 15 years of my life, a big chunk of it I can't put on a resume. Okay. Anyone that I would use as a reference doesn't use their real name. So I was kind of like, I've got 15 years that if I leave this, what am I going to do? Right. And so one of my podcast guests, I remember, very successful. His name is Tony Grebmeyer. He owns Ship Offers. He has a podcast called, I think it's Be Yourself, or anyway, it doesn't matter. I got on his podcast. He got on mine. And when I was done with him, I said, hey, listen, I'm getting out of this the business that I'm in, and I could use some help. Could use some help, some suggestions. And he says, well, have you ever hired a coach? And have you ever joined a mastermind? And I go, no, I've never done that. He goes, well, you need to start there. Okay, that's number one, right? So I had another guest who had told me about masterminds. And so I reached out to him. I said, listen, I want to join a mastermind. He goes, let me hook you up with my buddy. And it was the Dad's Edge mastermind group, right? Obviously catering to dads, right? How to be a better dad, how to be a better man, better husband, that kind of a thing, right? So I joined that mastermind group. And in the process of being in that mastermind group, I got a chance to hang out with some very strong, successful entrepreneurs. and just listening to their language and listening to how they talk. And they asked me about what I had going on, and I told them about the podcast. I told them about the downloads and the people that were listening. He goes, "Oh my God, you've got a huge following. How are you monetizing that?" I go, "Well, that's why I'm here, because obviously I'm not monetizing it." And they said, "Well, why don't you just coach?" I said, "Coach? I'm not qualified to coach." And they all just hysterically broke into laughter. Like, it was just the funniest thing ever, right? They're like, "You're a coach, you don't even know it." Okay. You have people, thousands of people every day tuning in to listen to you. They want you, they want what you have, or they'd be listening to somebody else. Just hang your shingle and let them come in. And so all the imposter syndrome, especially because in the recovery space, everyone's working for free. Right? It's the most thankless job. It's like being a parent. So, everyone's working for free. In recovery, they frown on people, making money off of helping others. So I had to get past that. And then my wife went to an NLP workshop one weekend, and she let me know, and I was like, "Oh, I want to come with you." And she go, "Yeah, let's go together." And my mind was blown. I spent one weekend listening, 2 days, watching this guy do some NLP techniques. And I'm like, "Oh, I'm doing this. This is what I'm doing." So after that weekend, I asked him to coach me. So he coached me one-on-one. And then my wife and I took his practitioner course, which was a 2-week intensive, 10-hour a day certification program. And I came out of it much like I did out of my many psychedelic journeys. I saw myself for the first time. When I finished that certification, I saw me, because I had been this person for a long time. I just couldn't see me.